The desert wind had begun to cool as evening settled over White River Valley, carrying with it the smell of dust, pine, and distant rain. The stranger noticed them first as moving shadows against the fading light. Two young Apache women stumbling along the narrow trail that cut past his cabin at 9,200 feet above the Colorado plains. Their steps were uneven, shoulders slumped with exhaustion, and their clothing torn and stained from days of hard travel. They had the look of people who had not slept properly in far too long, driven forward by fear rather than strength. Elijah McAllister had been chopping wood when he first heard them. His hands, calloused from 15 years of mountain living, paused mid-swing. The rhythm of the axe stopped. In the silence that followed, he heard what didn't belong: the shuffle of moccasins on stone, the ragged breathing of someone past their limits. He was a mountain man in every sense. Beard thick and reddish-brown, streaked with gray at the temples. Hair long enough to touch his shoulders, tied back with leather cord. His arms were roped with muscle from splitting logs and hauling water. His chest broad from a life that demanded strength. A scar ran down his right forearm, a reminder of a grisly encounter 5 years back. But it was his eyes that told the real story. Blue-gray, like winter sky over the Rockies. Eyes that had seen too much loss and chosen solitude as a response. When the two women reached the clearing near his cabin, the younger one nearly collapsed. Elijah moved quickly but carefully, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. He could see it in their eyes, weariness sharpened by survival, pride refusing to let them beg. The older woman, tall and strong despite her exhaustion, had her hand on a knife. Her eyes were black and sharp, measuring him not just as a man, but as a potential threat. She was Apache. He knew that immediately from the way her hair was braided, from the doe-skin dress she wore, from the patterns on the small bag at her hip. "Water," she said, her voice hoarse. "My sister needs water." Elijah looked at the younger girl. Her face was flushed red with fever. Her leg, he could see now, had blood seeping through a makeshift bandage at the thigh. The wound was days old, infected. He had 5 seconds to decide. 5 seconds where the mountains held their breath. 5 seconds where a man's character showed itself, without the shield of words or time to think. Then he lowered his hands, nodded once and turned toward the cabin. "Come," he said simply. The cabin was small and rough, built from lodgepole pine logs and years of solitude. A single bed stood against the far wall, a wooden table nearby, and a fireplace that still held warmth from the morning's fire. Shelves lined one wall, packed with dried herbs, tinctures in glass bottles, and supplies salvaged from a life he'd left behind. Elijah pointed to the bed. The older woman, Ayasha, though he didn't know her name yet, hesitated only a moment before lifting her sister onto the thin mattress. The girl, Naiche, moaned softly as fever dreams pulled at her consciousness. He was already moving, hands washed in the water basin. Whiskey pulled from the shelf, clean cloth, needle and thread, and a small jar of green salve made from yarrow and pine resin. He'd learned medicine the hard way in these mountains. You either learned or you buried people. "Wound infected 3 days," Ayasha said, her voice tight with worry beneath the stoic mask. "We ran, no time to stop." Elijah didn't ask who they were running from. In 1885 Colorado, an Apache woman running usually meant only one thing: the Indian agents, the schools, the bounty hunters who made their living returning escaped natives to reservations. "This will hurt," he said, pouring whiskey over the infected gash. Naiche woke with a scream. Ayasha held her sister's shoulders, whispering words in Apache that Elijah couldn't understand but recognized as comfort, as love, as the sound a warrior makes when she cannot fight the enemy hurting her family. "Strong girl," Elijah said, not as empty praise but as observation. She didn't pass out. Good sign. Ayasha looked at him for the first time without full suspicion. "You know medicine? Lived in these mountains 15 years. You learn or you die." His hands worked as he spoke, cleaning the wound with practiced efficiency. Not gentle, but not cruel. Necessary. 8 stitches later, he spread the salve over the closed wound and wrapped it with clean bandage cloth. The fever would break or it wouldn't. The infection would respond or it wouldn't. He'd done what he could. "Willow bark tea for fever," he said, already moving to the fireplace to heat water. "She'll sleep now. Might make it, might not. Infection's deep." Ayasha swallowed hard. Her throat worked against words she wouldn't let out. Instead, she said only, "Thank you." Elijah looked at her with those winter sky eyes. "Don't thank me yet. Someone's tracking you, and they'll be here by morning." The words hung in the air like smoke. Ayesha didn't ask how he knew. She just nodded. This man understood the mountains. He understood pursuit. He understood the price of kindness in a hard world. Elijah poured 2 cups of willow bark tea, one for Naichi when she woke, one for Ayesha now. The older sister took it, hands trembling slightly from exhaustion she could no longer hide. "When did you last eat?" Elijah asked. 2 days, Ayesha admitted, the words bitter with shame. Apache warriors didn't admit weakness. But honesty was sometimes its own kind of strength. Without comment, Elijah pulled bread from a tin, dried elk meat from a hook, and pemmican he had made according to the recipe his Ute friends had taught him years ago. He set it all on the table and pushed it toward her. "Eat. Slow. Stomach needs time." Ayesha stared at the food, then at him. "Why you help?" The question was fair. White men didn't help Apache, not in 1885, not after years of war, broken treaties, and blood on both sides. Elijah was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, an owl called through the gathering darkness. "Because I didn't help when I should have. Once," he finally said. His voice was low, carrying weight he didn't explain. Ayesha heard what he didn't say. She heard grief. She heard regret. She heard the voice of a man who'd lost something he could never get back. She began to eat, slowly as he'd instructed. The bread was hard but good. The meat was tough but flavorful. The pemmican tasted like survival itself. Elijah sat in the wooden chair near the door, his Winchester rifle across his lap, but not pointed at her. He wasn't guarding her. He was guarding the door, protecting them from what might come through it. "Your cabin is small," Ayesha observed. "Not criticism, just fact." "One man doesn't need much," Elijah replied. The corner of his mouth lifted, almost a smile, but not quite. "One man," Ayesha repeated. "You have no wife?" "Had. Long time ago." He didn't elaborate. The door to that part of his past was closed and locked. Ayesha didn't press. Apache understood privacy, understood that some stories were too painful to tell to strangers, even strangers who'd sewn your sister's leg and offered you food. From the bed, Naichi moaned in her sleep. Ayesha was on her feet instantly, warrior reflexes overriding exhaustion. "She's dreaming," Elijah said calmly. "Fever dreams, better than the shakes." "You are doctor?" Ayesha asked, skepticism creeping into her voice. "White doctors, in her experience, let Indians die. I'm a man who buries too many things if he doesn't know medicine," Elijah said. The humor was dark, dry as the mountain air. Ayesha almost smiled. "Apache also bury many things. We understand." The moment stretched between them. Not friendship yet, not trust, but the beginning of recognition that they were both survivors of a world that took more than it gave. Elijah stood, walked to an old trunk, and pulled out a wool blanket. "You take the bed with your sister. I'll sleep here." He gestured to the floor near the fireplace. "No," Ayesha protested immediately. "This is your home. We cannot take your bed. You need rest more than I do. And if someone comes tonight, I want to be at the door first." His tone left no room for argument. This wasn't negotiation. This was strategy. Ayesha studied him for a long moment, measuring, deciding. "You are not like other white men I know," she said finally. "I'll take that as a compliment," Elijah replied, spreading his blanket on the wooden floor. The night deepened. Stars spilled across the sky outside in brilliant profusion, the kind of stars you only saw at altitude, away from the smoke and light of civilization. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low. Naichi's breathing evened out as the willow bark tea began its work. Ayesha lay beside her sister, one hand still on her knife beneath the blanket, but her eyes closing despite her will to stay alert. Elijah lay on the floor, back against the door, rifle within arm's reach. He listened to the night sounds, the wind through the pines, the distant call of a coyote, the settling of logs in the fireplace. He'd told himself for 5 years that he was done with people, done with caring, done with the risk of loss that came with letting anyone matter. His wife Sarah and his son Thomas Jr. had died in 1880 from cholera. He'd been hunting elk in the high country when the epidemic swept through the Ute camp where they'd lived. By the time he returned, they were already buried. The white doctor in the nearest settlement had vaccine, but he wouldn't share it with Indians, said they didn't deserve white man's medicine. So 12 people died, including Elijah's family. That was when Elijah McAllister built this cabin and decided to live alone until he died. But tonight, 2 Apache women slept in his bed. Tonight, he'd chosen to help. Tonight, he'd chosen to risk the very thing he'd spent 5 years avoiding, caring about someone else's survival. He didn't sleep. Mountain men learn to go days without sleep when necessary. Instead, he watched the darkness beyond his window and wondered what tomorrow would bring. At 2 in the morning, Ayesha sat up silently. She moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit valley below. "Can't sleep?" Elijah asked quietly. "Someone is out there," she whispered. 300 yards north ridge. I saw firelight, brief, then dark. Elijah came to the window. He saw nothing, but he believed her. "You sure? I tracked deer since I was 7. I know when eyes watch me. How many? Fire too small for many men. Maybe 2, 3. Scouts." Elijah felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Respect. Most white men wouldn't have seen what she'd seen. Wouldn't have the skill to read the night like a book. "Good eyes," he said sincerely. "Most white men wouldn't see that." "Most white men don't live long in mountains," Ayesha replied with a hint of pride. "True words," Elijah agreed. They stood together at the window, 2 people from different worlds, watching for danger in the darkness. "They wait for dawn," Ayesha analyzed. "Attack when we are tired, probably bounty hunters. They want us alive, worth more money." "Virgil Kane," Elijah said, his voice turning cold as February ice. Ayesha turned to him. "You know him?" "Know of him. He's been hunting your people for 3 years. Got a legal warrant from Indian Affairs. $300 per escapee from reservation." Ayesha's fists clenched. "We are not escapees. My sister was taken by force to boarding school. I take her back home." "Law doesn't care about that," Elijah said. "Not cynical, just realistic. But I do." The words hung between them. A declaration. A line drawn. "We could leave before dawn," Ayesha suggested. "Take horses, go west into high country. Kane's men don't know these mountains like I do." Elijah considered this. "Your sister can't ride hard. She'll die from fever if we move her now. Then I stay and fight. You go." Ayesha's voice was iron. "This is my cabin. I don't run from my own home." Elijah's voice matched hers. They looked at each other. 2 stubborn souls, 2 people who'd learned that retreat sometimes cost more than standing ground. From the bed, Naichi moaned. Both of them turned toward the sound. "We have until dawn," Elijah said finally. "Let her rest. We'll figure it out then." "Together?" Ayesha asked. The word carried weight. Trust was beginning, fragile as first ice on a November pond. "Together," Elijah confirmed. Then, as the first hint of gray touched the eastern sky, neither of them knew that this choice, this single word, would set in motion events that would test every principle they held. Neither knew that by sunrise they would face not just Virgil Kane's greed, but the arrival of 80 Apache warriors led by a father desperate to find his daughters. Neither knew that the simple act of offering a bed to 2 exhausted strangers would become a story told around fires for generations. They only knew that dawn was coming, and with it, a reckoning. Dawn arrived with the subtlety of a whisper, pale light slipping through the gaps in the cabin walls like an uninvited guest. Elijah had been awake for hours, his body trained by 15 years of mountain living to sense the shift from night to morning before his eyes confirmed it. The air changed. The birds changed their songs. Even the quality of silence was different. He rose from his position by the door, joints stiff from a night on hard wood, and moved to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. Snow had fallen during the night. Not much, just an inch or 2, but enough. Enough to be a canvas that told stories to those who knew how to read it. And Elijah McAllister knew how to read snow the way priests read scripture. The tracks were everywhere. Fresh, crisp-edged in the early light. 8 horses had passed within 100 yards of the cabin, coming from the east. The hoof prints were deep, purposeful, the gait of animals being pushed hard. Riders who had a destination and didn't care about preserving their mount's strength. But that wasn't what made Elijah's chest tighten. From the south, from the direction of Apache territory, came another set of tracks. So many tracks that they overlapped and merged into a churned pathway through the fresh snow. He counted the distinct prints he could see: 30, 40, 50, more, many more, 80 horses at least, maybe more, moving fast, moving with purpose. And both sets of tracks were converging on this valley. But on this cabin, Ayasha appeared at his shoulder, silent as a smoke. She'd moved without sound, a skill that reminded him of the Ute warriors he'd known. She looked at the tracks, and her face, which had been soft with sleep a moment before, hardened into something carved from stone. "My father," she said simply. Her voice carried no emotion, but Elijah heard the complexity beneath. Relief that he was coming. Fear of what would happen when he arrived. Shame that she'd caused him to ride out with his warriors. Pride that he'd come at all. "And the others?" Elijah asked, though he already knew. "The men who hunt us, they circle like wolves, they wait for a moment to strike." From the bed, Nietzsche stirred, her eyes open, clearer than they'd been the night before. The fever had broken sometime in the dark hours, leaving her weak but conscious. She saw her sister and the white man standing at the window, saw the tension in their bodies, and understood without words that the temporary safety of night was over. "Sister," Nietzsche said in Apache, then switching to English for Elijah's benefit. "What happens now?" Elijah turned from the window. "Now we prepare. Your father will be here by mid-morning if he maintains that pace. The men tracking you, they'll move sooner. They know they're running out of time." He crossed to his supplies, began pulling items down with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd survived by being ready for anything. Ammunition, dried meat, water skins, a second rifle, powder and shot for the muzzle loader that hung over the mantel. Ayasha watched him work. "You have much weapons for hermit." "Hermit doesn't mean fool," Elijah replied. "Mountains are beautiful. They're also deadly. So are the men who come into them." He paused, looked at her directly. "Can you shoot?" "I am Apache warrior. I can shoot bow, rifle, pistol. I can throw knife at 30 paces and hit eye of rabbit." Her voice carried no boast, just facts stated plainly. "Good, you'll need to." He handed her a rifle, a Henry repeater. 16 shots, don't waste them. Ayasha took the weapon, checked it with the quick competence of someone who knew firearms. "Where you learned to trust Apache woman with gun?" "Where I learned that skin color doesn't determine character." That was 15 years of living with the Ute. He didn't elaborate, didn't explain about Sarah, about the community that had accepted him when his own people had not. From outside, faint but growing louder, came the sound of horses. Not many, 3, maybe 4. Moving at a walk, cautious, scouting. Elijah moved to the door, cracked it open just enough to see out. 3 riders, white men, hard-looking. The kind who made their living in ways that didn't bear close examination. The lead rider was tall, thin as a whip, with a face like worn leather. Virgil Kane. Elijah had never met him, but he'd seen the wanted posters, heard the descriptions. Kane sat his horse easily, eyes scanning the cabin, the terrain, calculating odds and angles. To his left rode a younger man with a deputy's badge pinned to his coat. Lucas Brennan, more politician than lawman, the kind who used a badge as license rather than responsibility. To his right, a hired gun whose name Elijah didn't know and didn't care to learn. "Elijah McAllister," Kane's voice rang out across the clearing, carrying the false friendliness of a snake oil salesman. "We know you got visitors. 2 Apache women, escaped from St. Catherine's School. There's a federal warrant for their return. Send them out and there won't be trouble." Elijah didn't answer immediately. He was calculating. 3 men now, but where were the others? The tracks had shown 8 horses, 5 more out there somewhere, flanking positions probably. This wasn't Kane's first hunt. "Those women are injured," Elijah called back. "One's sick with fever. I'm not sending anybody anywhere in that condition." "That's real noble of you," Kane replied, and Elijah could hear the sneer in his voice. "But the law's the law. You're harboring fugitives. That makes you a criminal. Now I'm going to give you one chance to do this the easy way." Elijah felt Ayasha move up beside him. She'd positioned herself at the side window, rifle ready, watching the tree line where she suspected the other riders were concealed. Her instincts were good. Elijah could see movement there too, shadows that didn't quite match the pattern of branches and snow. "And if I don't?" Elijah asked, buying time. trying to think 3 moves ahead, like a chess player who knew the game ended in checkmate, but wanted to delay it as long as possible. Then we come in and get them. And you get arrested for obstruction. Federal crime. Kane's horse shifted, sensing its rider's tension. Or you could resist. That'd be even easier. Dead men don't testify. The threat hung in the cold morning air. Naichi had pulled herself to sitting on the bed, despite the pain it cost her. Her face was pale but determined. Her hands gripped the blanket. "Do not die for us," she said to Elijah, in careful English. "We are not worth white man's life." Elijah looked at her, saw a 16-year-old girl who'd been torn from her family, beaten in a school that called itself civilized, wounded trying to escape, and now believed she wasn't worth defending. Something in his chest, something he thought had died 5 years ago with Sarah and Tommy, stirred back to painful life. "That's not your call to make," he said gently, "and you're wrong about your worth." He turned back to the door, made his decision. "Kane, you got your warrant, but I got rights too, and one of them is not letting you take sick people out into winter weather to die on the trail. So here's my offer. We wait, let the girl recover, then we talk about what happens next." Kane laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Wait, while Chief Taza rides this way with every warrior he can muster? Not a chance, hermit. You got 1 minute to send those squaws out, or we're coming in." Elijah closed the door, barred it with the heavy beam he'd carved from oak, moved to reinforce the shutters. Ayasha was already doing the same on the other side. "They will burn us," she said calmly. "It is what men like him do when they cannot have what they want." "Probably," Elijah agreed, "which is why we're not staying here." Ayasha looked at him sharply. "Naichi cannot ride. You said yourself, she can't ride hard. But she can ride if we go slow, and slow is better than burning." He was already moving, gathering supplies, making decisions with the rapid-fire clarity of a man who'd survived worse odds. "We go out the back. There's a root cellar, opens to a gully 30 yards from here. We can make it to the tree line before they know we've moved. And then," Ayasha demanded, "they will track us. Then we make them work for it, and we buy time for your father to arrive." Elijah pulled on his heavy coat, started helping Naichi to stand. The girl bit her lip against the pain, but made no sound. Apache children learned early not to cry. They moved fast. Elijah led them through the cabin's small back room where he stored potatoes and onions in winter, down into the root cellar he dug into the hillside. The tunnel was narrow, dark, smelling of earth and old vegetables. Naichi had to be half carried, with Ayasha on one side and Elijah on the other. Behind them, they heard Kane's voice counting down. 30 seconds, McAllister. 20. 10. They emerged from the tunnel exit just as the first gunshots rang out. Not into the cabin, not yet. Warning shots, Kane trying to scare them into surrender. The tree line was 40 yards away, not 30. 40 yards of open ground covered in snow that would show their tracks clear as ink on paper. But there was no choice. Elijah got Naichi onto his horse, a sturdy mountain-bred gelding named Ghost. Ayasha swung onto her own mount with fluid grace. "Go," Elijah commanded. "Due west. Follow the ridge line. There's an overhang about 2 miles up. Gives shelter, good defense position. I'll catch up." "No," Ayasha said flatly. "We go together or not at all." "Stubborn woman," Elijah muttered, but he was already mounting behind Naichi, holding her steady. "Fine, but we move now." They rode. Behind them the sound of splintering wood as Kane's men began breaking down the cabin door. Shouts of anger when they found it empty. Then the inevitable discovery of the tunnel, the tracks in the snow leading west. The pursuit began. Elijah knew these mountains the way a sailor knows the sea. Every trail, every box canyon, every place where the terrain turned from friend to enemy. He led them along paths that only looked like suicide routes, where the snow was thin because the wind scarred it away, where the rock face gave just enough shelter from rifle fire. Ayasha rode like she'd been born on horseback. Probably had been. Apache children learned to ride before they could walk properly. She kept pace with him, asked no questions, trusted his lead even though he was white, and she had every reason in the world not to trust white men. Naiche, wedged between Elijah's arms as he controlled Ghost, was slipping in and out of consciousness. The fever had broken, but the ride was taking its toll. She mumbled in Apache, words Elijah didn't understand but recognized as prayer or plea. "How much further?" Ayasha called over the sound of hooves on stone. "Half-mile," Elijah called back. "But we've got company." He'd heard it a moment before. The echo of pursuit. 4 riders, maybe 5. Coming fast. Cain wasn't giving up, wasn't willing to let his prize escape. They rounded a bend, and there it was. The overhang he'd promised. A shelf of rock that jutted out like a prow of a ship, 30 feet deep, protected on 3 sides by stone. Defensible. More importantly, it had something else. Sam Whitehorse was sitting there, calm as Sunday morning, tending a small fire. Sam was 68 years old, Ute elder, friend of 15 years, and the man who'd taught Elijah half of what he knew about surviving in these mountains. He was short, compact, with a face creased by weather and wisdom. His hair was white as the snow around them, braided long down his back. "You are late," Sam said in English, not looking up from the fire. "I expected you an hour ago." Elijah dismounted, helped Nietzsche down. "How did you know?" "Birds told me," Sam said with a completely straight face. Then he smiled. "And actually, my nephew saw Chief Taza's war party yesterday, saw Cain's group day before. I know you, Elijah. You cannot walk past suffering. So I know you help Apache women. I know everyone come here. I know you need friend." Sam stood, approached Ayasha with the proper Apache greeting, speaking in her language. She responded, surprise and relief evident in her voice. "He says he knows my father," Ayasha translated for Elijah, though Sam spoke perfect English when he chose to. "Says they met many years ago. Says father is good man, but also very protective. Very angry when daughters disappear." "Angry is small word," Sam corrected, switching to English. "Chief Taza is riding with 80 warriors. He thinks daughters stolen by white slavers. He will kill first, ask questions after. This is why I come. Someone must speak truth before blood flows like spring melt." Elijah heard horses approaching, not close yet, but closing. Cain's men, relentless as wolves on a blood trail. "Sam, we need to slow them down. Buy some time." "Already done," Sam replied. He pointed up the slope. Elijah looked and saw what he'd missed before. A pile of logs, carefully positioned, held in place by a single rope. Old logging technique. Cut the rope, the logs would avalanche down onto the trail below. Sam grinned. "I am old but not useless. This will give them something to think about." The first of Cain's riders appeared around the bend. It was the deputy, Brennan, spurring his horse hard. He saw the overhang, saw his quarry had stopped, and raised his rifle. Sam cut the rope. The logs came down like the wrath of an angry kid, tons of dead wood, ice, and rock cascading onto the narrow trail. Brennan's horse reared, screaming. The rider behind him couldn't stop in time, collided with Brennan's mount. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs and cursing. The logs kept coming, piling up, creating a barrier 15 feet high across the trail. "That will hold them maybe 2 hours," Sam said calmly. "Maybe 3 if they are stupid." He looked at Elijah. "What is plan now?" "Plan is we wait for Chief Taza," Elijah said. "We tell him the truth before Cain fills his head with lies." "And you think Chief will believe White Hermit?" Sam raised an eyebrow. "You have much faith." "No," Ayasha said quietly, "but he will believe his daughters." She moved to where Nietzsche was lying by the fire, wrapped in blankets Sam had provided. The younger girl's eyes were open now, aware. "Sister," Ayasha said in Apache, then English. "When father comes, we must tell him everything. The school, the beatings, this man who saved us. All of it." Nietzsche nodded weakly. "Father will listen. He always listens to us, even when he is angry." Sam had pulled out supplies. Real coffee, not the chicory substitute most people drank. Dried venison, some kind of flat bread. He prepared food with the unhurried competence of a man who'd survived 80 winters and didn't waste energy on panic. "Eat," he commanded. Angry fathers arrive better on full stomach. They ate. Despite everything, despite the danger, despite Cain's men undoubtedly working to clear the logjam below, they sat around Sam's fire and ate. There was something deeply human about it, something that transcended culture and conflict. "Tell me about the school," Sam said to Nietzsche. His voice was gentle, but there was steel underneath. Steel and old rage. Nietzsche looked at her sister. Ayasha nodded permission. They came 6 months ago, Naichi began, her English halting but clear enough. Men with papers said all children must go to school, learn to be civilized. Father tried to refuse. They said soldiers would come if he refused. Kill everyone. So father let me go. Because he is wise. He knows he cannot fight whole army. She paused, gathering strength. School was big building, stone, cold. They cut my hair first day. Said long hair is savage, I cried. They hit me for crying. Said Indians don't cry. Sam's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Just listened. Every day, same thing. Wake up, pray to white man's God. Forbidden to speak Apache. If we speak Apache, they beat us. If we sing Apache songs, they lock us in dark room. No food, no water, sometimes for days. Elijah felt something hot and dark rising in his chest. He'd heard stories about the Indian schools, but hearing it from this girl, seeing the scars on her arms where the blanket had slipped, made it real in a way stories never could. Headmaster's name was Hiram Cole, Naichi continued. He said he was saving our souls, said savage ways must be beaten out, made to disappear. He had thick stick, used it on children who refused to forget their language. She pulled up her sleeve. Burn marks, circular, deliberate. This from when I spoke Apache to another girl. She was crying, missing her mother. I tried to comfort her in our language. Headmaster heard. He made me put my hands on hot stove, said I would learn not to speak devil's tongue. The fire crackled. Nobody spoke. The enormity of it, the casual cruelty disguised as education, sat among them like a fifth presence. Finally, Sam broke the silence. This headmaster, Hiram Cole. I know this name. He ran Fort Trading Post 15 years ago, sold whiskey to Indians, bad whiskey, killed many people. Then he became religious, said he was saved. Now he saves Indians by destroying them. His voice dripped with contempt. How will you escape? Ayasha asked her sister softly. Kitchen worker, older woman. She was Navajo. She gave me key, told me when guards changed shift. I ran for 3 days before sister found me. I tracked her, Ayasha added. When she did not come home after 6 months, I knew something wrong. Father sent warriors to ask about her. School said she was fine, learning well, but I did not believe, so I went myself. Found the school, watched, waited. Then I saw Naichi running. I followed. Caught up to her 2 days ago. And then, Elijah prompted, then bounty hunters started following us. We knew they would. School pays money for returned children. $300 each, good money for bad men, which brought them here, Sam concluded. To the one man in these mountains foolish enough to help Apache strangers. Elijah smiled without humor. Foolish is good word for it. No, Naichi said suddenly, strongly, not foolish. Kind. You are kind man, Elijah McAllister. Kind is more rare than foolish. From below, they heard voices. Kane's men had started clearing the logs. It was hard work, would take time, but it was happening. Sam stood, looked south. Dust on her horizon, large group, moving fast. Chief Taza comes. Maybe 1 hour, maybe less. Elijah did the math. Kane's men would clear the barrier in 2 hours. Chief Taza would arrive in 1. That gave them maybe 30 minutes of overlap. 30 minutes where anything could happen, where a spark could become a wildfire, where misunderstanding could become massacre. Sam, Elijah said, I need you to do something. Ride to meet Chief Taza, Sam replied before Elijah could finish. Tell him truth before he sees cabin, sees white men with guns, sees daughters and assumes worst. Yes, I know. This is why I am here. You are a good friend, Sam. I am only friend, Sam corrected. All others think you are crazy hermit. Which is true, but you are my crazy hermit. He gathered his things with remarkable speed for a man of 68, mounted his horse, a paint mare that looked as old and tough as her rider. Before he left, he turned to Ayasha. Your father is good man, he said in Apache, then English. But he has been hurt many times by white men's lies. When I tell him truth, he may not believe. You must be ready to speak. You must be strong. Daughter's words carry weight father cannot ignore. Ayasha nodded. I will speak. Sam rode south toward the approaching war party, toward the delicate task of stopping 80 angry warriors with nothing but words and trust built over decades. They watched him go, a small figure on horseback descending into the valley, riding toward a force that could kill him without thought if he said the wrong thing or was simply unlucky. "He will be okay?" Nietzsche asked. Elijah hoped so, prayed so, though he wasn't sure he believed in prayer anymore. Sam's been talking his way out of trouble for 70 years. If anyone can do it, he can. And if he can't, Ayasha asked, then we'll have 80 Apache warriors, 8 bounty hunters, and a hermit who just wants to be left alone, converging on this mountain at the same time. Elijah checked his rifle, and somebody's going to die. Maybe all of us. Not acceptable, Ayasha said firmly. We do not let you die for us. Again, Elijah thought, not your choice, but he didn't say it aloud. Instead, he said, then we better figure out how to make sure nobody dies. Because your father's coming, Cain's coming, and in about an hour, this whole mountain is going to explode. He looked at the 2 Apache women, one barely able to stand, one who'd spent 3 days running on nothing but will and love for her sister. Both of them trusting him, a white stranger, in a world where white strangers usually meant death or worse. 5 years ago, Elijah McAllister had decided he was done with people, done with caring, done with the pain that came from attachment. He'd built a cabin high in the mountains and waited for life to pass him by. But life, he was learning, didn't ask permission. It just happened. And now it was happening faster than he could control. The sun climbed higher. The temperature rose, but not much. The snow began that slow melt that would turn the trails to mud by afternoon. Below, Cain's men worked to clear the barrier. South, Sam rode toward 80 warriors. And here, on this shelf of rock, 3 people who shouldn't have been allies prepared for a confrontation that would test everything they believed about justice, mercy, and the thin line between the two. Elijah McAllister had wanted nothing more than to be left alone. Instead, he'd chosen kindness. And that choice, that simple human impulse to help 2 strangers in need, was about to change everything. The mountains waited, the men approached, and the reckoning, when it came, would spare no one. The war party appeared first as a dark line against the southern horizon, like a storm cloud taking solid form. Then the line resolved into individual riders, 80 strong, moving with the disciplined precision of men who'd ridden together through countless battles. At their head, unmistakable even at distance, rode Chief Taza. Elijah watched through the scope of his rifle, not aiming, just observing. The chief sat his horse like he'd been born there, back straight, shoulders squared. Even from half a mile away, his presence commanded attention. War paint marked his face in patterns Elijah didn't understand but recognized as significant. The feathered headdress he wore caught the morning light, each feather earned through deeds Elijah could only imagine. Behind him rode warriors in their prime, young men and seasoned fighters, all armed with rifles, bows, lances. Some carried shields decorated with symbols of their clans. Others had medicine pouches hanging from their saddles, spiritual protection for the balance they expected. This was not a rescue party. This was an army. "They are beautiful," Ayasha whispered beside him. Her voice carried pride and pain in equal measure. "My people, so strong, so ready to die for family." "Let's make sure they don't have to," Elijah replied. Below their position, Cain's men had finally cleared enough of the log barrier to squeeze horses through single file. The deputy, Brennan, was the first to make it past, his face red with exertion and fury. The hired guns followed, 5 of them total now visible. They regrouped on the far side, discussing strategy in voices that didn't carry up to the overhang. Cain pointed up toward where Elijah and the women waited. Even without hearing the words, Elijah could read the intention. They were coming. They had maybe 15 minutes before the bounty hunters reached them, and the war party would arrive in 20. The timing was catastrophic. Nietzsche struggled to sit up, her face still pale, but her eyes clear with determination. "Sister, we must go down. Must meet father before fighting starts." "Too dangerous," Ayasha said automatically, the protective older sister overriding the warrior's tactical sense. "More dangerous if we hide," Nietzsche countered. "Father will see white man with his daughters. He will think we are prisoners. He will attack. Many will die." Her English had improved over the hours, sharpened by necessity. She was right. Elijah knew it. Ayasha knew it. The worst possible scenario was Chief Taza arriving to find his daughters apparently held hostage by a white man with a rifle, while bounty hunters closed in from below. That looked like exactly what it wasn't. That looked like a trap, a betrayal, the kind of thing that started massacres. We go down, Elijah decided. Meet them in the open. Show we're not hiding, not threatening. They will kill you before father can stop them, Ayasha said flatly. Warriors see white man, they shoot. Questions come later. Then you better talk fast, Elijah replied. He was already moving, helping Naichi to her feet, supporting her weight. Can you ride? Can try, Naichi said through gritted teeth. For father can do anything. They descended from the overhang, taking a switchback trail that led to the valley floor. It was exposed, vulnerable. Anyone below could pick them off easily. But Elijah was counting on Kane's men being smart enough to realize that gunfire would bring the war party at full gallop. Nobody wanted that fight. They reached the bottom just as Sam Whitehorse appeared, riding hard from the south. The old man's face was grim. Chief Taza comes, Sam called out. He knows daughters are here. He knows white men are here. He does not know which white men are friends, which are enemies. He will assume all are enemies unless proven otherwise very quickly. Did he believe you? Elijah asked. He believed I am not lying. That is not same as believing the truth I tell will be the truth he finds. Sam's words were careful, chosen with the precision of a diplomat walking a knife's edge. He will listen to daughters first. Everything else is wind until he hears from them. The pounding of hooves announced the war party's arrival. They came fast, spreading out automatically into a crescent formation that cut off all retreat routes. Warriors dismounted with fluid grace, rifles ready, eyes scanning for threats. A perimeter formed in seconds, professional and absolute. Then Chief Taza rode forward alone. He was 55 years old, Elijah knew from Sam's earlier briefing, but he moved like a man 20 years younger. His face was weathered copper, marked with old scars that spoke of battles survived. His eyes, black as obsidian, swept across the scene, taking in everything. His daughters, the white man standing with them, the rifles, the defensive positioning, the trail behind them where Kane's men were undoubtedly advancing. His expression revealed nothing. Daughters, he said in Apache. The single word carried the weight of 6 months of fear, anger, and relief colliding. Father, Ayasha replied, stepping forward. She didn't run to him. Apache warriors didn't display that kind of emotion in front of others, even family. But her voice held everything her body language suppressed. Naichi tried to walk forward on her own, stumbled. Elijah caught her automatically, steadying her. 50 rifles swung toward him. He froze. Didn't let go of Naichi because dropping her would look like aggression, but didn't move either. Just stood there, supporting a 16-year-old Apache girl while her father's warriors decided whether to kill him. Father, Naichi called out in Apache, then English, her voice stronger than her body. This man saved my life. I was dying from infected wound. He gave medicine, gave food, gave his own bed while he slept on floor. He is good man. Chief Taza's eyes narrowed. He looked at Elijah with an intensity that felt like being studied by a predator, measuring, calculating, looking for the lie beneath the words. Many white men do good things while planning bad things, the chief said. His English, perfect, touched with an accent that made it somehow more formal. Why should I believe you are different? Because I've got nothing to gain from this, Elijah replied, keeping his voice steady despite the rifle still pointed at his chest. I live alone. Don't want visitors. Don't want trouble. Your daughter showed up at my cabin, half dead. I helped because it was the right thing to do. That's all. The right thing, Chief Taza repeated. He dismounted, walked forward slowly. His warriors stayed ready but didn't fire. That was something. White men have many ideas about right thing. Usually those ideas involve taking what belongs to us. Not this white man, Sam Whitehorse interjected. He speaks truth, Chief Taza. I have known Elijah McAllister 15 years. He lived with Ute people, married Ute woman, lost her to white man's disease that white doctor refused to treat. He understands what it means when your people decide some lives matter less than others. Chief Taza looked at Sam, then back to Elijah. He was close now, 10 feet away, close enough that Elijah could see the silver threading through his black hair, the lines around his eyes that spoke of hard decisions made over decades of leadership. "Show me your daughter's wound," the chief commanded. Elijah carefully, slowly, helped Naichi sit on a nearby boulder. Ayasha moved to her sister's side, rolled up the pant leg to reveal the bandaged thigh. The chief knelt, examined the wound with the practiced eye of a man who'd seen combat injuries all his life. This was deep cut, he observed. Infected badly. Would have killed her in 2 more days. Someone with medicine knowledge cleaned it, stitched it, treated it with healing plants. He looked up at Elijah. "You did this?" "I did," Elijah confirmed. "Why? The question was direct, demanding real answer, not comfortable platitudes. "Because I have a kit with medical supplies and know how to use them. Because watching a kid die when you can prevent it isn't something I'm capable of anymore." Elijah paused. "I lost my son 5 years ago. He was 8. Sometimes I think if I'd been there, if I'd had medicine, maybe he'd still be alive. So when I see someone else's kid dying, I do what I couldn't do for my own." The silence that followed was profound. Chief Taza stood slowly, looked at his daughters, looked at Elijah, looked at the warriors surrounding them. When he spoke, it was in Apache first, a lengthy speech that Elijah couldn't understand but heard the cadence of. Formal, declarative, important. Then he switched to English for Elijah's benefit. "My daughters tell me a place called school, where white men take children by force, where they beat them for speaking the language of their ancestors, where they burn them for praying to the gods of their people, where they try to kill what makes us Apache and replace it with something they find acceptable." His voice was controlled, but barely. The rage underneath was volcanic. "They tell me this man, Hiram Cole, runs this place, that he grows rich on government money while children suffer. They tell me my youngest daughter nearly died escaping this place, that her sister risked everything to rescue her, that you, Elijah McAllister, sheltered them when you could have turned them away." Chief Taza took a step closer. "They also tell me that men hunt them. White men with legal papers that say they have right to take my children back to place of torture. That these men come here now. That blood will be spilled on this mountain today." He paused, let the weight of that sink in. "So I ask you, white man who lives alone in mountains, what happens now? You have helped my daughters. For this, I owe you. But if I let bounty hunters take them, I betray everything I am as father-in-chief. If I fight bounty hunters, I start war that brings soldiers, that ends with my people dying or locked on reservation forever. Tell me, what is right thing now?" It was a test. Elijah recognized it immediately. The chief was asking him to solve an impossible problem, to see how he thought, what he valued, whether his help had been genuine or calculated. Elijah took a breath. "Let me talk to them, to Cain and his men. Let me explain the situation. Maybe we can avoid bloodshed. And if talking fails," Chief Taza pressed, "then we make them leave another way. But we do it smart, not a massacre, not something that brings the army down on your people." "Brave words," the chief observed, "but Cain has legal warrant. What argument can you make that beats piece of paper signed by white man's government?" "The truth," Elijah said simply, "that the warrant is based on a lie, that your daughters didn't escape a school, they escaped torture. There's a difference." "White man's law does not see difference," Chief Taza replied. "Law says Indian children must be educated. It does not say they must be treated like human beings while being educated." "Then we change the conversation," Sam Whitehorse suggested. He'd been quiet, letting the 2 men talk, but now he stepped forward. "We make this about Hiram Cole, not about school. We show he is corrupt, stealing government money, abusing his position. White men care about corruption when it costs them money." "How we show this?" Chief Taza demanded. Naichi spoke up, her voice thin but determined. "I know things, heard things while working in kitchen. Headmaster takes food meant for children, sells it to town. Takes clothes meant for children, sells them. Takes medicine, sells it. Everything he can steal, he steals. Kitchen workers keep record. They hate him. They want him gone. They gave me paper, names, dates, amounts." She reached into her dress, pulled out a folded, sweat-stained paper, gave it to her father. Chief Taza unfolded it, scanned the contents. His eyebrows rose. "This is detailed. This is proof. Take it to the marshal," Elijah suggested. "Not the deputy with Cain. He's corrupt. But there's a real marshal in Columbine Creek 5 miles west. John Cooper. He's by the book, but he's fair. Show him this. Tell him what happened to your daughter. He'll investigate. And if he does not, Chief Taza asked, then we try something else. But we give law one chance to work before we decide it's broken. Elijah met the chief's eyes steadily. I'm not naive. I know the law usually doesn't work for your people. But sometimes when you have proof this solid, when corruption is this blatant, even a fair lawman can act. The sound of approaching horses interrupted them. Kane's group had made it through the barrier, was closing fast. They'd be visible around the bend in less than a minute. Decision time. Chief Taza looked at his daughters, at Elijah, at Sam, at his 80 warriors ready to kill and die on his word. The weight of leadership, the burden of knowing that his next choice would determine who lived and who died, showed in every line of his face. We try your way, he said finally. We talk first. But, he held up a hand, my warriors stay ready. If Kane or his men threaten my daughters, if they draw weapons, if they show any sign of taking my children by force, we end them. All of them. Instantly. You understand? I understand, Elijah said. Fair terms. Fair would be me killing every bounty hunter who ever terrorized my people, Chief Taza said quietly. This is mercy. Remember that. He turned, gave orders in Apache. His warriors shifted, creating a corridor. A space where Kane's men could ride in, but would be completely surrounded, completely vulnerable. A demonstration of power wrapped in the gesture of parley. Kane and his men rounded the bend. They saw the war party, saw 80 armed warriors, saw Chief Taza standing with his daughters and Elijah. To their credit, they didn't run. To their detriment, they didn't surrender either. Kane rode forward slowly, hands visible and empty, but his eyes calculating odds even as he approached. He stopped 20 feet away. Chief Taza, he called out, his voice carrying false respect. I'm Virgil Kane. I have a federal warrant for the return of two Apache girls who escaped from St. Catherine's Indian Industrial School. I see those girls are with you now. The law says they must return with me. The law, Chief Taza replied, his voice like winter ice, says many things. Does it say children can be beaten, burned, starved? Because that is what happened at your school. That's not my school, Kane said quickly. I just enforce the warrants. What happens at the school is not my concern. It is your concern, Ayasha said, stepping forward, her voice ringing clear across the space between them. When your money comes from returning children to torture, you know what happens there? Everyone knows. But you do it anyway because $300 per child is good money. You are not lawman, you are slaver. Only difference is ink on paper. Kane's face reddened. I follow the law, girl. You don't like the law, take it up with Congress. We take it up with Marshall, Chief Taza interjected. Real Marshall, in Columbine Creek. We show him proof of what happens at school. Show him proof that Headmaster Hiram Cole is criminal. Then we see what law says. That will take time, Kane protested. I can't just wait around while you... Yes, Elijah cut him off. You can, because the alternative is you try to take those girls by force, and 80 Apache warriors turn you and your men into history. So we're all going to Columbine Creek. Together. We're all going to see Marshall Cooper. Together, and we're going to let justice work the way it's supposed to. Together. He emphasized the last word each time, making it clear this was not negotiable. Kane looked at his men, looked at the warriors, did the math. 8 against 80. Even with rifles, even with the element of surprise, the odds were suicide. Fine, he spat. We'll go to your marshal. But when he sides with me, when he orders those girls returned, you'll have no excuse left. You'll have to follow the law or become outlaws, all of you. Then let us find out, Chief Taza said calmly. He mounted his horse, gestured to his warriors. They formed up, surrounding Kane's group without making it obvious they were prisoners. Protective escort, it could have been called. Mobile cage, it actually was. The strange procession began moving west toward Columbine Creek. 80 Apache warriors, 8 bounty hunters, 2 Apache women, 1 white hermit, 1 Ute elder, all riding together toward a reckoning that would be decided not by guns or arrows, but by law and evidence, and the question of whether justice could exist in a system designed to deny it to some. Elijah rode beside Chief Taza. The older man was silent for a long time, then spoke quietly so only Elijah could hear. "You risked much for daughters you did not know." "I risked a cabin and my life," Elijah replied. "You risked your people's future." "I got the easier choice." Chief Taza glanced at him. "You loved your family very much. More than I knew until they were gone. This is why you helped mine. Not politics, not justice, just father understanding." "Father, maybe," Elijah admitted. "Or maybe I'm just tired of watching people die when there's another option." "I've been alone 5 years, Chief. Alone is safe. Alone means no pain, but it also means no purpose. Your daughters gave me a purpose again, even if just for a few days." Chief Taza nodded slowly. "If we survive this, if my daughters are truly safe, you will always have place with my people. This I promise." "Appreciate that," Elijah said, "though I suspect I'm a little old to become an Apache warrior." The chief smiled the first time Elijah had seen it. "Warriors are made by actions, not by age or blood. You stood when you could have hidden. You protected when you could have ignored. You chose the hard right over the easy wrong. These are warrior things." They rode in silence after that, each man lost in his own thoughts about what awaited them in Columbine Creek, about whether Marshal Cooper would see justice or just law, about whether this day would end in peace or blood. Behind them, Ayasha rode with her sister, holding Naichi steady in the saddle. They spoke in Apache, words that Elijah didn't understand but recognized as prayers. Prayers for their father. Prayers for the strange white man who'd helped them. Prayers for a world where children didn't have to choose between their identity and their safety. The sun climbed higher, the snow melted, and the mountains, ancient and impartial, watched humanity struggle with questions that had no easy answers. By noon, they would reach Columbine Creek. By evening, they would know if kindness was rewarded or punished in a world that claimed to value both law and justice, but rarely managed to honor both at once. Columbine Creek appeared in the valley below like something out of a fading photograph. All weathered wood and false fronts, a collection of buildings pretending to be more permanent than they were. Population maybe 300 on a good day, mostly miners, ranchers, shopkeepers, and the women who kept them fed and clothed and relatively civilized. The town had never seen 80 Apache warriors ride down its main street. Elijah watched from his position near the front of the column as people emerged from buildings, drawn by the sound of so many horses. Faces appeared in windows. Shopkeepers stepped onto boardwalks. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A woman gathering laundry from a line froze with a sheet in her hands, staring. Fear rippled through the town like wind through wheat. "This could go very wrong very fast," Elijah muttered to Sam, who rode beside him. "Everything about this day could go very wrong very fast," Sam replied. "So far we are lucky. Lucky does not last forever." Chief Taza rode at the head of his warriors, his bearing making it clear he came not as a supplicant, but as a leader of equal standing. His warriors remained mounted, silent, weapons visible, but not raised. The message was carefully calculated. We are not attacking, but we are not defenseless either. Kane and his men rode in the middle of the formation, technically free, but practically prisoners. The deputy, Brennan, kept touching his badge as if reminding himself of his authority. Kane himself looked like a man calculating rapidly shifting odds. Elijah guided them toward the marshal's office, a squat building at the end of Main Street with bars on the windows and a weathered sign that read U.S. Marshal, Colorado Territory. He dismounted, helped Naichi down. The girl was exhausted, barely able to stand, but she held her head high. The door opened before they could knock. Marshal John Cooper stood in the doorway. He was 50 years old, gray-bearded, with the weathered face of a man who'd spent decades enforcing law in places that barely had any. His eyes were sharp, taking in the scene with professional assessment. He wore his badge pinned to a leather vest, his gun belt positioned for quick draw if needed. "Elijah McAllister," Cooper said, his voice neutral. "Haven't seen you in 2 years. Heard you'd become a hermit who shot at visitors." "Only the ones who deserved it," Elijah replied. "We need to talk, Marshal. Got a situation that needs your attention." Cooper's eyes moved past Elijah to Chief Taza, to the 80 warriors, to Kane. "I can see that," he stepped back from the door. Chief, you and your people are welcome in my town as long as there's no trouble. Kane, get in here. You too, Elijah. And whoever else has something relevant to say. Chief Taza dismounted with fluid grace. Both my daughters come with me. They are the ones with story to tell. Cooper nodded. Fair enough. The rest of you, he addressed the warriors and Kane's men, stay peaceful or I'll have something to say about it you won't like. Inside, the marshal's office was spare and functional, a desk covered with papers and wanted posters, a gun rack, a small stove, two cells in the back, both currently empty. Cooper gestured to chairs, but there weren't enough for everyone, so most remained standing. Now, Cooper said, settling behind his desk, somebody tell me what is happening before my town panics and does something stupid. Elijah spoke first, laying out the events of the past 24 hours with the plain directness of a man stating facts, not pleading a case. Found these two women near my cabin. One was wounded, feverish. I gave them shelter, medical treatment. Kane showed up the next morning with a warrant to return them to St. Catherine's Indian Industrial School. Kane interrupted. A federal warrant, legally issued. These are escaped students. These are tortured children, Ayesha said, her voice cutting through Kane's words like a knife through cloth. She stepped forward. I am Ayesha, daughter of Chief Taza. This is my sister Naichi. We do not come here to beg. We come to show truth. She pulled up Naichi's sleeve, revealing the burn marks. Marshal Cooper's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Show him your back, sister, Ayesha said softly. Naichi hesitated, then turned, lifted her shirt enough to reveal a pattern of scars. Old wounds, healed badly, the marks of repeated beatings with something thin and flexible. A switch or cane. The room went silent. Cooper stood, walked over, examined the scars with the detached professionalism of a man who'd seen violence but never stopped being affected by it when inflicted on the defenseless. How old are you, girl? 16, Naichi said quietly. And these marks? From Headmaster Hiram Cole. For speaking Apache. For singing Apache songs. For refusing to say my people's ways are evil. She paused. Other children have worse scars. Some children died at school. Sickness. Beatings. One girl hung herself in the night. She was 12. That's quite an accusation, Cooper said carefully. Naichi pulled the folded paper from her dress, handed it to the marshal. Kitchen workers keep record. They write down everything Headmaster Cole steals. Food meant for children, he sells. Clothes meant for children, he sells. Medicine meant for children, he sells. Everything. This paper has names, dates, amounts. They gave it to me when I escaped. Said if I could reach someone who cares about truth, give it to them. Cooper unfolded the paper, read it slowly. His expression darkened with each line. This is detailed, specific. If this is accurate, Cole is embezzling government funds on a significant scale. It is accurate, an unexpected voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. A woman stood there, mid-40s, respectable dress, carrying a basket. Rebecca Harris, owner of the general store, and one of the few people in town whose opinion actually swayed others. I know some of the kitchen workers mentioned in that document, Rebecca continued, stepping inside uninvited but unchallenged. They've spoken to me about conditions at the school. I didn't believe it could be as bad as they claimed. She looked at Naichi's scars. I was wrong to doubt, Ms. Harris, Kane said, his voice taking on a placating tone. This is a legal matter. These girls have a federal warrant. These girls have evidence of criminal activity and abuse, Rebecca countered. She looked at Cooper. John, you've known me 20 years. Have I ever lied to you? No, ma'am, Cooper admitted. Then believe me now when I say that school's a disgrace, and anyone who profits from returning children to that place is complicit in their suffering. She stared at Kane. Legal doesn't always mean right, Mr. Kane. The law is the law, Kane insisted, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. The law, Chief Taza spoke for the first time since entering the office, is supposed to protect the innocent. When it protects the guilty instead, it becomes just another weapon of the powerful against the weak. He looked at Cooper. You are marshal. You decide. Do you serve paper signed by corrupt men, or do you serve justice? It was a direct challenge. Cooper felt the weight of it. In the small office, with 80 warriors outside and a town watching nervously, the marshal had to choose what kind of lawman he was. Kane, Cooper said slowly, your warrant says these girls are escaped students from a federally funded Indian school. Is that correct? That's correct, Kane confirmed. And you're authorized to return them by force if necessary? By force if they resist. Yes, Cooper nodded. And you get paid per head? $300 per returned student. Standard bounty. Kane saw no shame in admitting it. So you got a financial interest in not asking too many questions about where you're returning them to. Kane's face reddened. I follow the law. What happens at the school is not my concern. Cooper turned to Chief Taza. And you, Chief, what do you want? I want my daughters safe. I want the man who hurt them punished. I want a world where taking children is called kidnapping, not education. But the chief's voice was heavy with pragmatism. I know I cannot have all these things, so I will settle for my daughters not going back to that place. If law says they must go back, then law and I are enemies, and I will act accordingly. The threat was clear, not blustering, not dramatic, just a father stating what he would do if pushed. Cooper sat back down, steepled his fingers. This is complicated. Justice is simple, Ayesha said. Right and wrong is simple. Only law makes it complicated. Wise words, Cooper acknowledged. But I'm a marshal, not a philosopher. I have to work within the system even when the system's broken. He looked at the paper Nietzsche had given him. However, this document alleges criminal activity. I have a duty to investigate criminal activity, and until that investigation is complete, I don't see how I can return anyone to a facility that may be operating illegally. Kane shot to his feet. You can't just ignore a federal warrant. I'm not ignoring it. I'm postponing its execution pending investigation. Different thing entirely. Cooper's voice was mild but firm. You got a problem with that? You can file a complaint with the territorial governor. Take about 6 months to process. 6 months! Kane was nearly shouting now. More or less. Cooper shrugged. Bureaucracy is slow, especially when there's questions about corruption and misuse of federal funds. The Bureau of Indian Affairs doesn't like scandals. They'll want this investigated thoroughly. Could take a year. Kane saw his $300 per head vanishing, his face twisted with frustration. This is obstruction. This is proper procedure, Cooper corrected. Now you can accept that and leave peacefully, or you can cause trouble and I'll arrest you for disturbing the peace. Your choice. The deputy Brennan put a hand on Kane's arm. Let it go. We can't fight 80 Apaches in the marshal. We'll come back when the investigation's done. Kane shook off the hand, but he was smart enough to know he'd lost this round. Fine, but this isn't over. He pointed at Elijah. You, hermit, you started this. You're going to regret getting involved. I've regretted a lot of things in my life, Elijah replied calmly. Helping 2 dying girls won't be one of them. Kane and his men left, their departure watched by every eye in town. The tension didn't ease immediately. It hung in the air like smoke from a doused fire. Chief Taza turned to Cooper. You risk much for my daughters. You are a good lawman. I'm a by-the-book lawman, Cooper corrected, and the book says investigate corruption. So that's what I'm doing. But, he held up a warning hand, this buys time, not resolution. Eventually I'll have to file reports, send telegrams, get official word from the Bureau. When that happens, if they still want your daughters back at the school, I'll have to enforce it. Then we have time to build case, Chief Taza said. Time to gather more evidence. Time to show more people what that school really does. Maybe, Cooper allowed. He looked tired suddenly, aged by the weight of trying to be fair in a system designed to be anything but. But you should know, Hiram Cole has friends, political friends, rich friends. Taking him down won't be easy even with evidence. Nothing worth doing is easy, Chief Taza replied. We are Apache. We understand long fights. From outside came the murmur of townspeople gathering. Cooper glanced out the window. I should address them. Let them know there won't be violence today. They're scared. They should be, Ayesha said quietly. When people like us ride into towns like this, it usually ends in blood. Then let's make sure today's different, Rebecca Harris suggested. She looked at Cooper. Let me help. The people know me. They'll listen if I vouch for the chief's word. Cooper considered this. It went against protocol, But protocol hadn't anticipated a situation quite like this, all right? But keep it calm. No speeches that'll rile people up either direction. They moved outside together. The street was packed now. Every resident who could walk had come to see what was happening. Miners with dirt still on their clothes. Ranchers who'd ridden in from homesteads miles away. Women with children held close. Old-timers who remembered worse times and feared their return. Marshal Cooper raised his hands for silence. The crowd quieted, but slowly, reluctantly. "Listen up," Cooper called out. "Here's the situation. Chief Taza and his warriors came here peacefully. They're not raiding. They're not attacking. They came because his daughters were being mistreated at a government school, and he wants justice. I'm investigating. While I investigate, everyone stays peaceful. Anyone who starts trouble, Indian or white, will answer to me." Clear, murmurs. Not agreement exactly, but acceptance. Rebecca Harris stepped forward. "I've seen the evidence," she said, her voice carrying across the street. "What happened to those girls is shameful. Any decent person would help them. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be decent." A man in the crowd, a rancher named Jack Thornton, spoke up. His voice was hard. 20 years ago, Apaches killed my son, burned my ranch, took everything from me. Why should I help them now?" The crowd went silent. Everyone knew Thornton's story. It was the kind of story that defined the territory. Blood on both sides. Grievances that went back generations. Chief Taza stepped forward. He didn't have to. He could have stayed silent, let others speak. But he walked to where Thornton stood and looked at him directly. "What was your son's name?" the chief asked. "Daniel. He was 15. "I lost 2 sons to white soldiers," Chief Taza said. "One was 14, one was 12. Their names were Nalin and Nako. We both know loss. We both know hate. Question is, do we pass that hate to our children, or do we try to build something different?" Thornton's face worked. Anger and grief and something else, something like recognition, fought for dominance. "Your daughters," he said finally, "they really get treated that bad at the school?" Naichi stepped forward before anyone could stop her. She was pale, swaying slightly, but her voice was clear. She lifted her arms, showed the burn marks, showed the scars. "They beat us for speaking our language, starved us for praying our prayers, told us we were savages who needed to be made human. Is this what you want? Is this justice for your son?" Thornton looked at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. "No, that's not justice. That's just more cruelty wearing a different name." He turned to the crowd. "I've got no love for Apaches, but I've got less love for men who torture children and call it civilization. If the marshal's investigating, let him investigate. If those girls need help, let them have it. My son wouldn't want his death used as excuse for this kind of thing." The mood shifted, not completely, not to acceptance or welcome, but to something close to tolerance, to a willingness to see what happened next before deciding on violence. Chief Taza nodded to Thornton. "You are a good man, better than your grief allows you to be. This takes strength." "Strength or foolishness," Thornton muttered. "Time will tell which." The crowd began to disperse, slowly, warily, but dispersing, crisis averted, at least for now. Sam Whitehorse appeared at Elijah's elbow. "That could have gone much worse. It still might," Elijah replied. "We bought time, not resolution." "Time is all any of us ever get," Sam observed. "How we use it determines everything else." Chief Taza approached them. "My warriors will camp outside town. We will not impose on your people's hospitality, but we will stay close until this matter is resolved." He looked at Elijah. "You will stay in town also?" "Someone should keep an eye on things," Elijah agreed. "Make sure Kane doesn't get creative." "You have done much already," the chief said. "More than any white man has done for my people in many years. Whatever happens next, you have my respect." "Respect doesn't keep you warm at night," Elijah replied, "but it's better than most alternatives." Ayasha had been speaking quietly with her sister. Now she approached her father. "Naichi needs rest, real rest. Bed, not saddle. Medicine, not trail water." Rebecca Harris, who'd been listening, spoke up. "She can stay at my house. Both of them can. I have room." She looked at Chief Taza. "Your daughters will be safe with me. You have my word." "And you have mine," the chief replied. If harm comes to them while in your care, I will hold you personally responsible. Fair enough, Rebecca said, unfazed by the implicit threat. She'd lived in the territory long enough to understand that sometimes the clearest statements were the most honest. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Columbine Creek settled into an uneasy peace. Apache warriors made camp in the meadow north of town. Townspeople went about their business, but with rifles closer to hand than usual. Kane and his men took rooms at the saloon, waiting, watching, planning their next move. And in Rebecca Harris's spare room, Naichi slept in a real bed for the first time in months, her sister keeping watch beside her. Both of them safe for the moment in a world that didn't guarantee such safety would last. Elijah stood on the boardwalk outside the marshal's office, looking at the town that had somehow become the center of something much larger than itself. Cooper joined him, offering a cigar that Elijah declined. "You think this will work?" Cooper asked. "The investigation. The hope that justice will actually happen?" "No," Elijah said honestly, "but I think we have to try anyway. Because the alternative is accepting that the system is broken beyond fixing. And once you accept that, you're just waiting for the violence to start. The violence might start anyway. Then at least we'll know we tried to prevent it. That matters. Not to history, maybe, but to us, to who we are." Cooper smoked in silence for a moment. "You're a strange man, McAllister. 5 years alone in the mountains, then suddenly you're in the middle of this." "Why more?" "Because 2 girls needed help, and I was there. It's not more complicated than that." "Everything's more complicated than that," Cooper observed. "Yeah," Elijah agreed, "but sometimes you have to act like it isn't. Otherwise, you never act at all." The night deepened, stars emerged, and in Columbine Creek, a town that had never expected to matter in the larger sweep of history, people on all sides wondered if tomorrow would bring peace or blood, justice or just another chapter in a long story of wrongs that could never quite be made right. 3 days passed in Columbine Creek. 3 days of careful peace maintained by mutual wariness and the shared understanding that violence would serve no one's interests. The Apache warriors remained camped outside town, their presence a constant reminder that this situation balanced on a knife's edge. Kane and his men stayed at the saloon, drinking too much and plotting too little, waiting for something to shift in their favor. In Rebecca Harris's spare room, Naichi healed. Her fever stayed broken. The wound on her leg closed properly under fresh bandages and regular care. Color returned to her cheeks. Strength returned to her limbs. But the scars on her back and arms remained, and the shadows in her eyes spoke of wounds that would take longer to heal than flesh ever could. Elijah had taken a room above the livery stable, refusing Rebecca's offer of better accommodations. He wasn't comfortable with charity, never had been. Preferred to pay his own way, even when his way was sleeping on hay bales and listening to horses shifting in their stalls below. It reminded him of simpler times, before he'd lost everything, when a place to sleep was just a place to sleep and didn't come wrapped in obligation. On the morning of the 4th day, Marshal Cooper received a telegram. Elijah was in the office when it arrived, having fallen into the habit of checking in each morning to see if the fragile peace had survived the night. Cooper read the telegram twice, his expression unreadable, then set it down carefully on his desk. "Bureau of Indian Affairs wants answers," Cooper said. "They're sending an inspector. Man named Harrison Webb. Should arrive in 5 days, maybe 6 if the trains run slow." "That good or bad?" Elijah asked. "Depends on whether Webb's honest or bought. Cole has money and friends. Inspectors can be influenced." Cooper leaned back in his chair. "But at least they're taking it serious enough to send someone. That's something. 5 more days of warriors camped outside town. 5 more days of Kane getting drunker and angrier. 5 more days of wondering if this ends in courtrooms or gunfire." Elijah rubbed his face, feeling every one of his 40 years. "We need to keep people occupied. Idle hands and old hatreds don't mix well." "You got a suggestion?" "Maybe. Let the townspeople meet the chief, really meet him. Not as warriors facing off, but as people. Hard to hate what you understand." Cooper considered this. Community gathering? Dinner maybe? Nothing that formal, just opportunities for conversation. Let Ayasha tell her story to more than just us. Let people see Naichi's scars with their own eyes. Truth is a powerful thing when it's not filtered through fear and rumor. Risky, Cooper observed. Could go wrong. Someone says the wrong thing, does the wrong thing, and we've got a bloodbath. Staying separate is riskier. Fear grows in isolation. Let them see each other as human beings, and maybe, just maybe, we get through this without anyone dying. Cooper thought about it, then nodded slowly. I'll talk to Rebecca. She can organize something, maybe at the church, neutral ground. Later that afternoon, as word spread through town about a gathering that evening, Elijah found himself walking with Ayasha through Columbine Creek's modest main street. She'd insisted on seeing the town properly, understanding the place where her sister's fate would be decided. Her father had agreed reluctantly, assigning 2 warriors to shadow them at a discreet distance. Your people build strange homes, Ayasha observed, looking at the wooden structures with their false fronts and painted signs. They pretend to be bigger than they are. Most people do, Elijah replied. Buildings are just more obvious about it. They passed the general store. Rebecca Harris saw them through the window and came out, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. Morning, she called out. Ayasha, I was hoping to see you. Been working on something for tonight's gathering. Could use your input. Inside the store, Rebecca had been baking. The smell of bread and cinnamon filled the air, warm and welcoming. On the counter sat several loaves in what looked like an attempt at Apache fry bread, based on a recipe Rebecca had gotten from somewhere. Thought people might be more willing to listen on full stomachs, Rebecca explained. And figured if I'm serving food, might as well include something from your culture. Show respect. Ayasha examined the fry bread. Her expression was carefully neutral. This is good effort, wrong shape, wrong thickness. But good effort. Could you show me, Rebecca asked, how to do it properly? For a moment, Ayasha hesitated. Apache women didn't typically share their food preparation methods with outsiders. It was more than cooking. It was culture, identity, the accumulated wisdom of generations. But then she looked at Rebecca's earnest face, at this white woman genuinely trying to bridge a gap she didn't fully understand, and something in Ayasha softened. I show you, Ayasha said, but you must do exactly as I say. This is not white person's bread that forgives mistakes. This requires attention. For the next hour, Elijah watched as the 2 women worked together. Rebecca's hands, used to measuring and precision, struggled with the intuitive approach Ayasha taught. The dough needed to feel right, not measure right. The oil needed to sound right when the bread hit it, not be tested with thermometers. It was art as much as science, and Rebecca was clearly out of her element. But she tried, and Ayasha, despite herself, was patient, showed her again when she got it wrong, praised her when she got it right. By the end, they had a pile of properly made fry bread and something that might have been the beginning of friendship between 2 women from worlds that rarely touched except in conflict. My mother would have liked you, Ayasha said suddenly, quietly. She believed Apache must learn from white world to survive, but also that white world must learn from Apache to be complete. She thought bridge could be built. She died before seeing if she was right. Maybe she was right, Rebecca said gently. Maybe we're building that bridge now. Slow, clumsy, but building. Or maybe this is brief peace before more war, Ayasha replied. History suggests war. History doesn't have to repeat, Rebecca countered, not if we choose different. The gathering that evening took place in the church, a simple wooden structure with a cross on top and benches that had been worn smooth by years of restless congregations. Reverend Thomas, who ran the church, had agreed to host despite misgivings. He was a man of God, he'd said, which meant he believed in redemption and reconciliation even when they seemed impossible. The townspeople came slowly, cautiously. Not everyone. Some stayed away, unwilling to sit in the same room as Apaches under any circumstances. But enough came. Families, single men. Even old Jack Thornton, the rancher who had lost his son, appeared and took a seat near the back. His face set in hard lines, but his presence itself a statement. Chief Taza entered with Ayasha and 10 of his senior warriors, all unarmed as a gesture of good faith. The warriors positioned themselves along the walls, not threatening, just present. The chief sat in the front row, his bearing regal, even in a simple wooden pew. Nechi came with Rebecca, still moving carefully but able to walk unassisted now. She took a seat beside her father, and Elijah saw the chief's hand briefly touch her shoulder, the only outward sign of the emotion he felt at having her close and safe. Marshall Cooper stood at the front. He wasn't a speech maker, didn't have the smooth tongue of politicians or preachers, but his plain honesty had earned him respect over decades of service. Most of you know why we're here, Cooper began. We've got a situation that could turn violent if we're not careful. Could end with good people dead on both sides. Or, he paused, we could try talking. Try understanding. Try finding a way through this that doesn't involve bloodshed. He gestured to Nietzsche. This girl has a story to tell. I've heard it. The chiefs heard it. Elijah and Rebecca have heard it. But you haven't. And before we go making judgments about who's right and who's wrong, seems fair that everyone hears the same story. Nietzsche stood. She was 16 years old, small for her age, still healing from wounds both visible and invisible. But when she began to speak, her voice carried the weight of experience beyond her years. My name is Nietzsche. It means mischief in Apache. My mother gave me this name because I was always curious child, always asking questions, always wanting to know why things were the way they were. She paused, gathering herself. 6 months ago, white men came to our lands with papers. These papers said all children between 6 and 16 must go to school, must learn to be civilized. My father did not want to send me, but the men said if he refused, soldiers would come, would kill our people. So my father let me go, because he is wise, because he knows he cannot protect me from the whole United States Army. The room was silent, every eye on this small Apache girl telling her story. At school, first thing they did was cut my hair. Apache women wear hair long. It is part of who we are. But they said long hair is savage. They cut it short like boys' hair. When I cried, they hit me. Said Indians do not cry. She lifted her arms, showed the burn marks that had become familiar to those who'd seen them, but were shocking to those who hadn't. Gasps rippled through the congregation. This is from second week. I was speaking Apache to another girl. She was homesick, crying for her mother. I tried to comfort her in our language. Headmaster Hiram Cole heard me. He made me put my hands on hot stove, held them there while he counted to 10, said I would learn not to speak devil's tongue. A woman in the crowd, Mrs. Patterson, put her hand over her mouth. Oh God, she whispered. This was not worst thing, Nietzsche continued. Other children had worse. One boy was locked in dark room for 5 days with no food because he refused to say his Apache name was wrong. One girl was whipped until she could not walk because she sang Apache song. Another girl, she was 12. She hung herself with bedsheet in the night, could not bear anymore. Why didn't you tell someone? A man called out. Report it to authorities? We tried, Nietzsche said simply. Headmaster Cole would bring inspectors sometimes. Important men from government. But before they came, he would warn us. Say if we told truth about school, he would make sure we never saw families again. Would send us to school even farther away. Would make us disappear. Some children believed him, some children did not. The ones who did not believe, who tried to tell inspectors truth, they disappeared. We never saw them again. Lies, a voice said from the back. Kane had entered without anyone noticing, stood in the doorway with Brennan beside him. That's all lies. Every word. This girl is a liar trying to avoid going back to school. Elijah was on his feet immediately. You weren't invited here, Kane. It's a public gathering in a church, Kane replied. Can't bar a man from church. That'd be ungodly. Marshall Cooper moved between them. Kane, you want to challenge her testimony? You can do it proper when Inspector Webb arrives. For now, let her finish. There's nothing to finish. She's lying to save her skin. Kane's voice carried across the church. And you're all fools if you believe her. Indians lie. It's what they do. Chief Taza stood. His movement was fluid, controlled, but carried implicit threat. You call my daughter liar. In Apache culture, this is challenge. You wish to challenge, we can settle this in traditional way. You and me. No guns, no warriors, just two men in truth. The church went dead silent. Kane paled slightly. He'd expected many responses, but not this. I'm not fighting you, old man. I'm a lawman. I work within the system. You are bounty hunter, Chief Taza corrected coldly. You work within system when system pays you. When system does not pay, you have no honor. Ayasha stood beside her father. You want proof she does not lie? She reached into her dress, pulled out the folded paper that had become their most valuable evidence. This paper has names, has dates, has amounts. Kitchen workers at school kept record of everything Headmaster Cole stole. Food meant for children, medicine meant for children, money meant for children. All stolen, all sold. This is proof that can be checked. Names can be contacted. Records can be examined. She handed the paper to Marshall Cooper. You said Inspector Webb comes in 5 days. Send him this paper before he comes. Let him investigate these names. Let him see if my sister speaks truth or lies. Cooper took the paper, studied it again. I can do that. Wire ahead. Give him something to check before he arrives. That paper was illegally obtained, Kane protested. Can't be used as evidence. Girl escaping torture is not illegal action, Rebecca Harris said sharply. She'd stood up, moved to stand with Ayasha and Naichi in a gesture of solidarity. And even if it was, truth is truth, regardless of how it's discovered. The mood in the church was shifting. Elijah could feel it. People who'd come skeptical were reconsidering. Naichi's scars were hard to dismiss. Her story, told without drama or exaggeration, carried the ring of truth. And Kane's aggressive denial was making him look defensive rather than righteous. Jack Thornton stood. I got a question for the chief. Chief Taza turned to face him. Ask, 20 years ago your warriors killed my son, burned my ranch. You remember that? I remember many raids, the chief said carefully. Many battles, much blood on both sides. I do not remember every individual death. But if your son died by Apache hands, I do not dishonor his memory by denying it. Yes, it is possible, even likely. Why? Thornton's voice broke slightly. He was 15, just a boy. Why kill a boy? Why did your soldiers kill my sons? Chief Taza replied, his own voice heavy with old grief. They were 14 and 12, just boys. Why kill boys? The two men stared at each other across the church. Two fathers who'd lost sons to a conflict neither had started, but both had been trapped in. I don't know, Thornton said finally. I don't know why any of this happens. All I know is I'm tired of it. Tired of hate, tired of blood, tired of pretending it makes sense, as am I, Chief Taza said quietly. I am an old man now. I have seen too much death, too much suffering. I do not want my daughters to inherit a world where only choice is kill or be killed. Then what do you want? Thornton asked. I want white people to stop taking our children. Stop trying to kill who we are while claiming to save us. Stop treating us like problems to be solved rather than people to be respected. The chief's voice was steady, not pleading, just stating, if white world cannot give us this, then we have nothing to talk about. But if white world can give us this, then perhaps we can find the way to live without killing each other's sons. The church was silent. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the stained glass windows in shades of red and gold. Inside, people sat with thoughts they'd never had to think before, seeing things they'd never had to see. Reverend Thomas stood at the pulpit. He'd been silent throughout, letting others speak. Now he cleared his throat. I'm a man of God, he said, which means I believe certain things about human nature. I believe we're capable of great evil, but I also believe we're capable of great good. And I believe that when we're faced with evil, even evil that wears the mask of law and civilization, we have an obligation to oppose it. He looked around the congregation. I've heard this girl's testimony. I've seen her scars, and I'll say plainly what I think. What happened to her is wrong. What's happening to children at that school is wrong. And if we stand by and let it continue because it's legal, or because we're afraid, or because we don't want to get involved, then we're complicit in that evil. He paused. So here's what I propose. We wait for Inspector Webb. We give him every bit of evidence we have, and we trust that truth, when properly presented, will lead to justice. But if it doesn't, if corruption wins out, then we as a community make it clear that Columbine Creek will not be party to sending children back to torture. Law or no law. That's sedition, Kane said. That's conscience, Rebecca corrected. There's a difference about. Marshall Cooper raised his hands. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We wait for Webb. We present evidence. We see what happens. Everyone agreed to that? Murmurs of assent from most of the room. Not everyone. Some people left, unwilling to associate with what they saw as Indians sympathizing. But more stayed than left. More stayed and listened and reconsidered positions they'd held their entire lives. As the gathering broke up, people approached Chief Taza, not to threaten or challenge, but to speak, to ask questions, to try, however awkwardly, to understand. The chief answered each with patience, explaining aspects of Apache culture, Apache history, Apache hopes for a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. Elijah watched from the side. Sam Whitehorse appeared beside him, having slipped in late to observe. "This is good," Sam said. "Not perfect, but good. People are talking, listening. This is how change begins." "If it lasts," Elijah replied. 5 days is a long time to maintain this. Anything could happen. Then we make sure nothing bad happens," Sam said simply. "We keep people talking, keep them engaged, keep them seeing each other as humans instead of enemies. You make it sound easy. It is not easy. It is necessary. There is difference." That night, as Elijah lay in his hay bale bed above the livery stable, he thought about everything that had happened over the past week. A simple act of kindness had cascaded into something far larger than he'd anticipated. Two girls needing help had become a town questioning its assumptions. A hermit wanting only to be left alone had become a bridge between cultures that rarely spoke except through violence. He didn't know if Inspector Webb would be honest or bought. Didn't know if the evidence would matter or be dismissed. Didn't know if this fragile peace would hold or shatter. But he knew that for the first time in 5 years, he felt like he mattered, like his actions had consequence and meaning beyond simple survival. Outside, the Apache camp glowed with small fires. Inside the town, people lay awake thinking about things they'd never questioned before. And somewhere in the darkness, Virgil Kane plotted his next move, unwilling to accept that his $300 per head might be slipping away. The trial of truth was just beginning, and its verdict would determine more than just the fate of two Apache girls. It would determine what kind of people the residents of Columbine Creek chose to be. Inspector Harrison Webb arrived on the morning of the 6th day, not by the expected train, but by private coach, which should have been the first warning. He was a thin man in his 50s, with wire-rimmed spectacles, in the manner of someone accustomed to being the most educated person in any room. His suit was expensive, his boots polished to a high shine, and he carried a leather satchel that looked more suited to a lawyer than a government investigator. Marshal Cooper met him at the edge of town, Elijah beside him. Chief Taza and a delegation of 5 warriors waited at a respectful distance, making their presence known without being threatening. "Inspector Webb," Cooper said, extending his hand, "appreciate you coming so quickly." Webb shook the hand perfunctorily, his eyes already scanning the Apache warriors. "I came because the allegations are serious. The Bureau takes accusations of misconduct very seriously." He paused. "Though I should note that Headmaster Hiram Cole is a respected educator with an impeccable record. These charges are quite extraordinary." "Evidence is extraordinary too," Cooper replied, handing over copies of the document Nietzsche had provided, along with his own notes from interviews. Names, dates, amounts, kitchen workers willing to testify, physical evidence of abuse. Webb took the papers, glanced at them briefly, then tucked them into his satchel without really reading them. "I'll review these in due course. First, I'd like to speak with the accusers, the 2 Apache girls." Something in Webb's tone set off alarms in Elijah's mind. The man had already decided, not based on evidence, but based on something else. Loyalty to Cole, perhaps, or money, or just the institutional bias that made it easier to dismiss Indian testimony than to investigate white corruption. "They're at the general store," Cooper said. "I'll take you there." The walk through town was tense. Word had spread that the inspector had arrived. People watched from windows and doorways, some hopeful, some cynical, all waiting to see if justice would be served or if this was just another performance by a system designed to protect its own. Rebecca Harris's store had become an unofficial headquarters for those supporting the Apache girls. When Webb entered, he found not just Nietzsche and Ayasha, but Rebecca, Reverend Thomas, several townspeople who'd attended the church gathering, and Sam Whitehorse. Webb's expression soured at the crowd. "This is an official investigation. I need to conduct interviews privately. These girls have a right to witnesses present, Rebecca said firmly. After what they've been through, I won't have them questioned alone by a stranger. Mrs. Harris, I presume, Webb said coldly. Your involvement in this matter is noted. Be aware that interfering with a federal investigation carries serious penalties. Helping abused children isn't interference, Rebecca replied. It's human decency. Webb turned to Naichi, who sat in a chair near the stove, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the day. She looked small and vulnerable, which was likely close to how she felt facing this man who held her fate in his hands. You are Naichi, daughter of Chief Taza, Webb began, pulling out a notebook. You absconded from St. Catherine's Indian Industrial School on September 28th. Is that correct? I did not abscond, Naichi said quietly. I escaped. The school records indicate you were a disciplinary problem. Multiple infractions, refusal to participate in educational activities, disrespect towards staff. Webb read from his notes as if reciting charges. Headmaster Cole describes you as one of the most difficult students he's ever attempted to educate. Difficult because I would not forget my language, Nietzsche replied, her voice stronger now. Difficult because I would not say my people are savages. Difficult because when they beat me, I did not thank them for it. The headmaster's reports indicate that discipline was administered only when absolutely necessary and always within accepted guidelines for Indian education, Webb said. He looked up from his notebook. These are serious accusations you're making. Accusations that could destroy a good man's career and reputation. Good men do not burn children's hands, Ayasha interjected sharply. Good men do not steal food from hungry children to sell for profit. Good men do not cause 12-year-old girls to hang themselves from despair. You were not a student at the school, Webb said dismissively. Your testimony is hearsay. My testimony is what I saw with my own eyes when I went to find my sister, Ayasha countered. I watched the school for 3 days before I helped her escape. I saw children being beaten, heard them crying in the night, saw them eating food that was rotten because good food had been sold. This is not hearsay. This is witness. Webb made notes, his expression skeptical. I'll need to verify these claims independently. The kitchen workers named in that document will verify them, Cooper interjected. I've already sent wires. 3 of them have responded. They confirm the records, confirm the abuse, confirm the embezzlement. Disgruntled employees with axes to grind, Webb replied smoothly. Not reliable witnesses. He closed his notebook. Based on my preliminary assessment, these allegations appear to be exaggerated at best, fabricated at worst. Indian students often claim mistreatment when faced with the necessary rigors of civilization. It's a documented pattern. The room erupted, multiple voices speaking at once. Rebecca's outrage, Reverend Thomas's protest, Ayasha's fury in both English and Apache. Chief Taza's warriors moved forward, hands moving toward weapons they weren't carrying. Enough, Marshal Cooper said, his voice cutting through the chaos. He looked at Webb. You came here with your mind already made up. I came here to investigate, Webb said stiffly. And I've investigated. There is insufficient evidence to support these allegations. The girls will return to St. Catherine's School. I'll escort them personally to ensure their safe arrival. Naichi made a sound, half sob, half whimper. Ayasha moved to her sister, wrapped arms around her protectively. That's not going to happen, Elijah said quietly. Webb turned to him. And you are? A concerned citizen, Elijah replied. Who's seen the evidence you're choosing to ignore? Seen the scars you're pretending don't exist? Heard testimony you've decided doesn't matter because it comes from Indian girls instead of white men? Your opinion is noted and dismissed, Webb said. He looked at Cooper. Marshal, I'm ordering you to facilitate the return of these girls to St. Catherine's School immediately. Failure to comply will be reported to your superiors. Cooper's jaw worked. He was caught between duty and conscience, between law and justice. The weight of the moment showed in every line of his weathered face. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Kane stood there, Brennan and 3 hired guns behind him. The bounty hunter was smiling, triumphant. Knew you'd see sense, Inspector, Kane said. These bleeding hearts tried to interfere, but law's the law. When do we transport the girls? This afternoon, Webb replied. I want them back at the school by week's end. No, Nietzsche said. The word was small but absolute. I will not go back. I will die first. That can be arranged, Kane said, his hand moving toward his gun. Everything happened very fast after that. Chief Taza appeared in the doorway behind Kane, having approached silently. His warriors materialized from positions throughout the store where they'd been waiting, unseen, prepared for exactly this scenario. Kane found himself surrounded by Apache warriors, each with a knife or hatchet. His hired guns reached for weapons, but froze when they realized they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. You will not take my daughters, Chief Taza said. His voice was calm, final, not a threat, a statement of fact. This is assault on federal officers, Webb sputtered, backing away. You'll bring the army down on your people. Better army than watching my children destroyed slowly by your civilization, the chief replied. Stop, Elijah said loudly. Everyone stop. He moved to the center of the room, positioning himself between the two groups. This doesn't have to end in blood. There's another way. What way? Webb demanded. The law is clear. The law is wrong, Elijah replied. But you're right that fighting federal officers brings consequences no one wants. So here's what we do. We appeal. We go over your head, Inspector. We take this evidence directly to the Bureau headquarters in Washington. We make it public. Newspapers, politicians, churches. We make this a scandal too big to ignore. That will take months, Kane protested. Then it takes months, Elijah said. And in those months, these girls stay here, under Marshal Cooper's protection, under this town's protection. Safe, while the system does what it's supposed to do and investigates properly. You have no authority, Webb said. But we have voice, Rebecca Harris interjected. She pulled out a document. Already started, petition signed by 57 residents of Columbine Creek, all testifying that they've seen evidence of abuse, all demanding proper investigation, and all willing to shelter these girls while that investigation happens. She handed it to Webb. More signatures coming every hour, words spreading to other towns, other territories. You think this stays quiet? You think Headmaster Cole's friends can suppress this once it's out in the open? Webb looked at the petition, at the signatures, at the determined faces around him. He was calculating. Not morally, politically. What caused him less trouble? Forcing the issue now and creating a public scandal, or delaying and letting his superiors deal with it. This is highly irregular, he said finally. So is torturing children in government schools, Reverend Thomas said. But here we are. Webb turned to Kane. Your warrant is temporarily suspended pending further review. The girls remain in Columbine Creek under Marshal Cooper's supervision. You'll be compensated for your time and expenses, but not the bounty. Kane's face went purple with rage. You son of a bitch. I tracked these girls for days. I got legal warrant. You can't just, I can and I have, Webb interrupted. Take it up with the Bureau if you disagree. Now get out before I have you arrested for threatening federal witnesses. Kane looked like he wanted to argue further, but the Apache warriors still surrounding him suggested that discretion was the wiser choice. He and his men left, their departure watched by every eye in the store. Webb packed his satchel with sharp, angry movements. This matter is far from resolved, but I'll file my report, recommend further investigation. No promises on the outcome. We don't need promises, Chief Taza said. We need truth to be told. If your system can do that, then we will work with your system. If not, then we have no more words for each other. Webb left without responding. The tension in the room didn't dissipate immediately. Too much had almost happened. Too close to violence. Too close to a point of no return. Nietzsche was crying, silent tears running down her face. Ayasha held her, whispering in Apache. Words of comfort, words of relief, words thanking spirits and ancestors for another day of survival. That was well done, Sam Whitehorse said to Elijah, using their own rules against them, making it too public to ignore. Smart. Or we just delayed the inevitable. Elijah replied, Webb will file a report that protects Cole. The Bureau will accept it because investigating is hard and expensive. And in 6 months, we're right back here. Maybe, Sam agreed, but maybe not. Sometimes delay is all you need. Things change, people change, systems change, slowly. But they change. Outside, the town was buzzing with news of what had happened. The confrontation, the standoff, the temporary victory. People were divided in their reactions. Some celebrated, some worried about consequences. Some wondered if they'd just witnessed the beginning of something historic or the beginning of something catastrophic. That evening, as the sun set over Columbine Creek, Chief Taza called a meeting of his warriors. Elijah was invited to attend, an honor that wasn't lost on him. They met in the meadow where the Apache camp was established, around a fire that had become a nightly ritual. The chief spoke in Apache first, a long speech that Elijah couldn't understand but recognized as important from the way the warriors listened. Then he switched to English for Elijah's benefit. We have one small victory today, but victory is not same as justice. Justice requires that bad men are punished, that good laws are made, that children are safe not because we fight for them each day, but because system protects them. He paused, looking at his warriors. We cannot stay here forever. Winter comes. Our people need us, but I will not leave my daughters in danger. So I ask you, my warriors, what do we do? One of the warriors, a young man named Naichi, the same name as the chief's daughter, spoke up. We should take them home. Forget white man's law. Protect our own. Another warrior, older, shook his head. If we do that, we confirm what white men say about us, that we are savages who do not respect law, that we cannot be trusted. This makes everything worse for all Apache. The debate continued. Arguments for leaving, arguments for staying, arguments for more direct action against Cole in his school. Finally, Ayasha spoke. She'd been silent, listening, but now she stood. I have thought much about this, she said, about what my mother would want. She believed Apache must adapt to survive, must learn to use white man's tools against white man's injustice. She believed we could be Apache and also be part of larger world. She looked at her father. I want to testify, not just here, in Washington, in newspapers. Everywhere people will listen. I want to be voice for all the children who cannot speak, who are too afraid, who are already dead. My mother said the future belongs to those who can walk in two worlds. So let me walk. Let me use the white man's system to change the white man's system. Chief Taza looked at his daughter with an expression Elijah recognized. Pride mixed with fear, love mixed with respect. The look of a father seeing his child become something more than he'd imagined. This is dangerous path, the chief said quietly. All paths are dangerous, Ayasha replied. But some paths lead forward. Some lead backward. I choose forward. The chief was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. You have my permission, my blessing. You will speak truth, and I will stand beside you, and all of us will stand beside you. He turned to Elijah. You have helped my family when you had no obligation to do so. You have risked much for people who are not your people. This is the action of a warrior. This is the action of a man with honor. If you are willing, I ask you to continue helping, to guide my daughter through white man's world, to stand as witness to her truth. Elijah felt the weight of the request. It wasn't just about helping two girls anymore. It was about being part of something larger. A challenge to a system that had operated in darkness for too long. A demand that civilization live up to its own stated ideals. I'll help, Elijah said. However long it takes, whatever it costs. Good, Chief Taza said. Then we begin tomorrow. We write letters, we contact newspapers, we send telegrams, we make noise that cannot be ignored. Sam Whitehorse chuckled. You have learned much about white man's ways, Chief. Make noise until they pay attention. This is very white strategy. It is warrior strategy, the chief corrected. Only the weapons have changed. That night, Rebecca Harris's general store became something it had never been before. A war room, a planning center. A place where Apache warriors and white townspeople worked together drafting letters, composing testimonies, planning a campaign that would bring the truth about Indian boarding schools into the harsh light of public scrutiny. Elijah wrote to contacts he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Traders, trappers, people who knew people, creating a network of information that would spread the story beyond Colorado territory. Reverend Thomas composed a letter to church leaders, appealing to Christian conscience, asking how followers of Christ could tolerate the torture of children in his name. Rebecca wrote to women's groups, temperance societies, reform movements, organizations that had power in the domestic sphere and used it to push for social change. And Ayasha, with Naiche beside her, wrote their testimony in clear, unflinching detail. Every beating, every burn, every humiliation, every theft, every death, names and dates and details that couldn't be dismissed as vague allegations. As midnight approached, Elijah stepped outside for air. The town was quiet. The Apache camp glowed with firelight. Above, stars scattered across the sky in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggles below. Sam joined him, offering a flask of whiskey that Elijah accepted gratefully. "You know this may not work," Sam said. "System protects itself. Always has. Always will." "I know," Elijah replied, "but we have to try because the alternative is accepting that children will be tortured, and we did nothing because it was hard or scary or politically complicated." Sam nodded. "This is why Sarah loved you. You cannot walk past suffering, even when walking past would be easier." The mention of his dead wife should have hurt, but somehow it didn't. Not anymore. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it had transformed, become something different. A memory of love rather than a wound. "She'd want me to do this," Elijah said. "She'd kick my ass if I didn't." "Yes," Sam agreed. "She would." They stood in comfortable silence, two old friends watching a town that had somehow become the center of something much larger than itself. Inside Rebecca's store, the work continued. Letters were sealed. Plans were made. A movement was beginning. Small, fragile, uncertain of success, but beginning nonetheless. And in the morning when the sun rose over Columbine Creek, it rose on a town that had chosen, however imperfectly, however uncertainly, to stand against injustice. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, not because success was guaranteed, but because it was right. Epilogue. 6 months later. Spring came to Columbine Creek in 1886 with the kind of warmth that made people believe in new beginnings. The letters had worked, not because the Bureau of Indian Affairs suddenly grew a conscience, but because the American public wouldn't let the story die. Newspapers from Boston to San Francisco ran Naiche's testimony. Churches across the nation collected signatures. Women's groups organized protests. Hiram Cole was arrested in February, tried in March, convicted of embezzlement, fraud, and criminal abuse in April. He received 15 years in federal prison. 7 other boarding school administrators faced similar charges. St. Catherine's School closed permanently. 23 other schools underwent federal investigation. The system didn't end, but it changed. Slowly, grudgingly, but it changed. Ayasha testified before Congress in March. Her words, measured and unflinching, were printed in newspapers across America. Some called her a troublemaker. Others called her a hero. She didn't care about either label. She cared that 300 children were released from abusive schools that year. 300 was not all, but it was 300 more than zero. Virgil Kane was found dead in a canyon outside Tucson in May. The marshal's report said, "Fall from horse." Apache trackers passing through said nothing, but they smiled. Chief Taza's people returned to their lands, but the relationship with Columbine Creek remained. Trade continued. Occasional visits. A bridge had been built, fragile but real, between two peoples who'd spent decades viewing each other as enemies. Rebecca Harris's store became neutral ground. Apache women sold beadwork there. White women bought it. Small conversations happened. Understanding grew, one interaction at a time, and Elijah McAllister rebuilt his cabin. Larger this time, with a room for guests, just as Sam Whitehorse had predicted with his knowing grin. Ayasha visited often, sometimes with Naiche, sometimes alone. They talked about books, about the future, about how change happened slower than they wanted, but faster than previous generations had dared hope. One evening in late May, as the aspens leafed out in brilliant green and the last snow melted from the high peaks, they sat on the porch Elijah had finally finished building. "Did you know?" Ayasha asked. "That first night, when you helped us, did you know it would lead to all this?" Elijah thought about it. The trials, the testimony, the children freed. The system changed, however slightly. "No," he said. "I just knew 2 girls needed help. Everything else came after. My mother would have liked you, Ayasha said. She'd said it before, but each time it carried more weight. I wish I could have met her. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and amber. Two people from different worlds who'd found common ground in the simplest of places, in choosing to help when help was needed. The system hadn't been fixed. Injustice still existed. The work was far from over. But cracks had formed, light was getting in, and 300 children slept in their own homes instead of cold dormitories. And sometimes, Elijah thought, that had to be enough, for now.